program. The program that in the 20s and the 30s that in many ways became just as prominent was that the Black Belt, you know, was the 6, you know, principal southern states, the 6 main slave states, be set aside and given to the black masses as their territory, as their country, as their nation, if you will, as a black nation. That was also very prominent and very popular. I will answer your question this way. We do not, as communists, we do not necessarily need to say that this is our program. That is the establishment of a black nation in 6 states of the South, or the Back to Africa vision. We don't need to say that's our program. What's important is that we support the right of black people to say that's what they want, and to support and defend them. It may not seem as though there's a difference to what I'm saying, but there is. We are socialists, we are communists. We have our own view, and it's necessary for us to, you know, to proselytize it. But part of supporting the right to self-determination is to understand that oppressed people, especially if it's a popular demand, must be supported in the program that they're putting forth that to them spells freedom and liberation. So it's a difference. There's a little difference there. We don't have to own it. We don't have to say this is our solution. But we are obliged to defend oppressed people who are demanding that.
I have 2 questions. One of them is a lot shorter than the other one. How do you define a nation exactly? Like, I feel like that's almost an abstract concept when it's not, when we're not talking about boundaries and geography, when it's all mixed up. I mean, well, that question kind of leads into the other one. How do you define liberation in a situation like that? Because, you know, you referred to Lenin, and with Lenin he was talking about the Russian Empire, which is a multinational empire that's geographically, you know, Uzbeks and Ukrainians, Russians, etc. That's an much easier question to answer. But liberation within the context of capitalism and integrated people, how can you have liberation without socialism exactly?
Well, you know, the party, and correctly so, moved away from trying to define a nation in some formula, which, and that was a thing among some groups. You know, you have to have this formula, what defines a nation: economy, geography, language, culture, you know, certain economic conditions, you know, all very interesting. That had its place. But a long time ago, we moved away from that as being more confusing for the national question than actually shedding light on it. And we realized that, you know, fundamentally, if you see that a people are suffering racist oppression, if they're being treated in a racist manner, and the basis for that racism is their commonality, their skin color, their language, their culture, then that's enough. The national question applies to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even if some are middle class, some are poorer, you know, they may not even live in the same ghetto, maybe you know, depending on where you live, that situation differs, you know. There is the struggle against national oppression and the struggle against racism may differ, but they overlap more than they differ. So it's helpful, it's more helpful than not, to see the struggle against racism as part and parcel of the struggle against national oppression. It also helps you in understanding demands and goals. Going back to Africa is one programmatic expression of self-determination. The establishment of a separate black nation is another programmatic expression of self-determination. But no less is affirmative action also a demand that's an expression of self-determination. You know, no less is community control of schools, or community control of the police, or community control of hospitals, a demand that is also an expression of self-determination. The right to participate in capitalist politics, that we believe that's a dead end, but it's still a right, it's still a democratic right that we're obliged to defend. You know, the national question supporting the right to self-determination and the struggle against racism should not be seen in a formula way or in some way that mystifies it. It's a struggle that is a day-to-day thing that affects everything we do, our attitude toward things. Part of the struggle against racism and national oppression is understanding why oppressed people think differently about certain things. You know, a policeman walks into the lot, and some people may say, "Oh, good, at least there's a cop here. You know, we're safe." You know, a white person might feel that way. Not all white people, especially young white people. You know, but a black person may say, "I gotta watch out because they're after me." You know, how do oppressed people think? How do they think differently? You know, why did most black people think differently about the outcome of the O.J. Simpson trial? You know, it addresses psychological, cultural, and social issues, the full gamut. You know, but if you want to know the best way to strengthen unity between the workers and the oppressed, we don't see any other way that you can get around this. You know, it affects attitudes in the workplace. You know, black workers are uncomfortable because the boss is not giving them enough time for their coffee break, and white workers seem to be getting more time. And somebody brings up the issue, and maybe somebody says, "Well, that's not important. We got bigger things. We got our contract negotiations are coming up. We want to get a pay raise. We want to get health benefits, and why are we going to get all sidetracked by this grievances that the foreman comes around and tells black workers to get back to work 5 minutes sooner than they tell white workers? Why do we want to even go there?" Well, that's the national question. You're in a multinational union, or on a campus for that matter, and the black students, or the black workers, or the Asian students, or the Latino students feel, well, listen, we feel isolated, and there's racism around, and in order to deal with the sometimes hostile environment that we find ourselves in, and also to promote things that are beneficial to us, that advance our rights, we want to form a caucus, and sometimes that comes up before a union leadership, and they say, "Oh, that's divisive," or "We're all together. It sounds very good." "Well, no, don't do that. Don't form a caucus." Well, take another look. Take another look. Maybe you gotta form that caucus, and maybe it's important that the white workers support it. And they're the ones that get up and say, if this is what's going to make black, Latino, or Asian workers feel safer and more able to defend themselves and their rights, then the union has to support it. And the union has to make its officers available to them and do nothing whatsoever to stop or frustrate it. And the same would be true if it's on campus or in the community, you know. So in many ways, how we deal with the national question in racism plays itself out in little ways like this. Unless something happens like there's a lynching or a police killing or, you know, or a big issue like an affirmative action demonstration, then that's the national question on another level.